Welcome back to He's a Giant, a pod about all things college football and all things Giants football. I'm your host, Sal, here with my co-host, Monty. What's going on, man?
What's going on, dude? Yeah, we're back. A little week hiatus, but we're back here with our offensive tackle review. I'm sure people might be filtering in right now. We got the Yankees game going on, so I'm sure that takes priority over this right now. But if you're here, if you're a Mets fan or a Yankee fan, doing a little dual screen, we appreciate you for being here.
Yeah, listen, forget about the Yankee game right now. You guys are whooping ass. You can just, mute it. Listen to us. It's fine. You'll be all right. They got this one in the bag. All right. Whoa, sorry.
A little double voice there.
Yeah. All right. So today we're going over, after a little, like you said, a little brief hiatus, we are going over the offensive tackle class of the 2025 draft. And honestly, dude, that just saying that leads us into a really nice segue into what is going on in Giants land. So let's start there. Giants play Monday night against at home on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Russell Wilson starting for the Steelers, going up against a team that said to him, "You are not going to be able to compete for a starting job." Giants walk in. Just one of those games where they're moving the football. They had almost 400 yards of total offense, but they just can never put the ball in the end zone. And these games just slip away. And then in the second half, you see things fall apart. And Russell Wilson looked really fantastic, making some incredible throws. Weird things happen to this game, man. Number one, with Andrew Thomas shelved, the Giants, who spent the whole offseason, saying that Josh Azudu is going to be their swing tackle, and who came out and he himself came out and said, "I've been focusing on swing tackle," plays one bad game, and they bench him and they bring in Chris Hubbard, like off the street, to be the starting left tackle. Evan Neal nowhere to be seen except for one snap later in the game on the 2-point conversion. I think he was on for that play, the 2-point attempt. What is going on with the offensive tackle situation, Monty?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the issue here is yes, they wanted Azudu to be a swing tackle, but the issue is they wanted him to be, their backup tackle, but the real option was moving Illuminor to tackle if anything went wrong and have Evan Neal starting out there. Evan Neal, we've heard some things about how he potentially rehab, how he might not be totally up with blocking schemes. There's lots of rumors floating around, but they're clearly done with this guy. And Illuminor, who was going to play guard and was an option at tackle if he had an injury like Andrew Thomas, if Evan Neal got hurt, but he was part of the guy. There you go. But the thing is, Evan Neal is healthy. They just won't play him. They are completely done with this guy, and our offensive line is completely falling apart. They banked on this guy to be their right tackle. They moved Illuminor to left guard. They moved John Runyon to right guard. They put off signing a veteran offensive guard for way too long, and they finally did the right thing, moved everything around. But it's amazing, after going through all that, they're unwilling to even try Evan Neal in this situation, even see if they can, get something out of a guy they spent the 7th overall pick just a couple years ago on. They are just done. Clearly, it's really disappointing to see. It's to the point where he really is a bigger bust than Eric Flowers. I think Ryan Disdier said that to me the other day. It's true. He's a bigger bust, and it's a damn shame, man. I think it's the root of a lot of these issues of where we are right now. That and just never easy losing your all-pro left tackle.
Is he that bad of a bust? I mean, he is a bust compared to where he was drafted, but they're not even trying him. One of the things that we had discussed going into the season was this guy might end up being a good guard. Give him the reps there, try him. They insisted he was a right tackle. This is the part that I don't get. And as I say that, the Dodgers come all the way back and just tie the game 5-5. So I guess
we're not a lot of Yankee viewers right now.
Sorry, Yankee viewers. We can listen.
You can catch us tomorrow.
catch us when you're celebrating that you actually came back and won the game,
There you go.
despite the Dodgers comeback. So anyway, dude, they said to us that this guy's a right tackle, and he's the starting right tackle. So much so that in camp and in preseason, Jermaine Illuminor, well, at least in camp, was taking exclusively left guard snaps and was asked about this over and over again. And he said, "I'm playing left guard. I was told I'm here to play left guard." And when the coaching staff was asked about it, they said Evan Neal's the right tackle. When he's back healthy, he's the right tackle. He's going to be the right tackle. And then he doesn't lose his job because he gets outperformed. He just wasn't healthy. So
Mm-hmm.
when he wasn't healthy, they move Illuminor to right tackle, and then we never see Evan Neal ever again. Like that's it. He's gone. Dustbin of history. He's been healthy for weeks. He's not getting tackle reps. He's not getting guard reps. So you would think once Andrew Thomas gets hurt, this is a man who played left tackle at a high level in college. Forget about how much he struggled in the NFL. He knows how to play left tackle, at least to some level of competence. And he's not even seeing the field. It's one thing to say he's not as good as like a really solid, career swing tackle who might be there, who is just a little more reliable. But you're talking about Chris Hubbard and Josh Azudu being ahead of him. This is insane. Like off the street, guys are coming in and starting for this team and looking horrible, by the way. Chris Hubbard, no offense to him, but he was just getting destroyed this whole game by Alex Highsmith. Um, and Evan Neal can't play. Like, you can't tell me that Evan Neal's definitively worse than that to a
Yeah.
degree where you don't even want to give him a chance to develop, right? That's the point. The upside of him is worth letting him develop.
I,
So what is happening there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is this is more than just Evan Neal being a bad football player. It's obviously a huge part of it. We've seen Evan Neal plenty. We know he has not been a good football player, but there's clearly more to this. They don't like Evan Neal. They don't like him for whatever reason. There's lots of rumors floating around. We don't know for sure, but they don't like this guy. And that's what makes it even more of a bust because he's not just a bad football player. He's also, at least within our locker room, doesn't seem like a person they want to have around is probably the way to phrase that.
Yeah, I mean, this is ugly, and this is something we've seen with his regime, Monty. It's not just Evan Neal, and I'm not giving a pass to Evan Neal, who has made his own bed of problems here, but they give up on guys and once they give up on you, like forget it. It doesn't seem like there's any sound reasoning left. They're just gonna, you're done. You're in the
Mhm,
doghouse forever. I mean, you're seeing it with Evan Neal. You're seeing it with Jalen Hyatt. Two
mhm,
two high draft picks with lots of premium attached to them. You basically have seen it with Josh Azudu at this point. Where they
mhm,
converted him off his position, and now
sure,
they're like, forget it. You're not good there either.
mhm,
Um, I mean, you're just seeing it with too many premium picks and players that they bring in just in the doghouse. I mean, before this, you saw it with Kadarius Toney. I mean, granted, they traded him, but they never let the guy get off the bench.
Eric
Um,
Gray. They
Eric
totally
Gray,
didn't use it
right,
all his rookie year,
right, a
even
later
when
pick,
Saquon
but
got hurt.
correct. He just doesn't get to play. You saw it with,
Daniel Bellinger.
Daniel Bellinger in the doghouse for no reason. You see
Mhm,
it with, I mean, to a lesser extent, a guy like Javarius Owens, who they cut finally from the
mhm,
practice squad, they were trying to bring on as a developmental safety, and they're like, yeah, forget it, he's gone too. Trey Hawkins, who they had starting, I mean, granted, 6th round pick, but you
mhm,
had him starting week 1 against Dallas last year. After a couple of bad weeks, forget it, he's gone. Like,
yeah.
there's nothing.
I mean, like, these are all varying degrees. There's obviously the bigger ones are like Hyatt, Neal, and probably Bellinger are probably like the big ones. But, there is like a trend of this where, it's not all the same. You can't compare these to the same level, but there's an idea of it with a lot of these guys.
Yeah, it's problematic because not only is Joe Shane not hitting on his picks at the degree you would need to be successful over the long haul, current good draft class notwithstanding, but when you abandon these picks, like you've now just created a hole. Like you're not even going to get a
Hmm.
chance to see if these guys can even be like depth contributors. You're just completely saying they can't be on my roster. I can't have them. They're not even depth. And now you got to not only find the starters that they were supposed to be, you have to find the depth that they could have been. They just completely give up on these guys. And
And
I do not understand what they're doing.
and for the record, knock on wood, hopefully that doesn't become Deontay Banks because a guy that they probably should have just benched to start the game if he was on this short of a leash. Instead, they let him play and decided to bench him a quarter and a half into the game. He's supposedly
Makes
going to start next week. He should, but they aren't happy with him. Where could that lead? I don't know. It's a guy that they traded up to get, though, just like they did with Jalen Hyatt, but this time in the first round.
What they're doing with Banks makes even less sense to me than the Evan Neal stuff because to some extent, as much as I think the way they're handling the Evan Neal situation is obnoxious, the Deontay Banks thing is one where your coaching style is being put on full display here. This is a kid who say what you want about his technical issues, which existed in college, which is his lack of ball skills, right? Like he can
Mhm,
mirror just about anybody. He can stick like glue to a lot of guys, but he doesn't turn his head.
mhm,
He doesn't get his arms up. It's a problem. It was there in college. It hasn't really gotten fixed yet. But those technical issues notwithstanding, this was never a low effort player in college. Like that's one of the things I remember you and I loved him because he was a guy who had a high motor all the
yeah, he
time.
was a dog.
And now he's coming in here and he played like that last year, but he's had a couple of games. I'm not sure what's going on in the kid's head, but he's dogged it a few times,
Mhm,
and look, players do that, right? It's not the end of the world when a young player dogs it. It's not a crisis unless you allow it to escalate into one.
mhm,
But he did it in Dallas. There were a couple other times on tape he did it, and then obviously in the game against the Eagles, it was pretty on display many times during the game. Not just the big Jalen Hurts run, but there were several times where he just didn't want to come in and help tackle and looked like he gave up on plays. It was pretty egregious. And, you had Jerome Henderson like jumping up and down demonstrative on the sideline when he gave up on the Hurts run. It was a no-brainer to bench him in that game. They didn't do it. After the game, you could make an argument that in the heat of the game, maybe you're not benching somebody because you're not paying as much attention to every little detail. But when you go back and watch the game film as the coach and you see what he did, how do you not bench him coming into this past Monday night game? Just to send a message. He's a 20, what is he, 23? Like a
mhm,
22, 23-year-old kid who is not a bad character. He's like a really high character kid, but he's obviously going through something. You send him a message and say, Deontay, this is not tolerable. Like in this team, we don't do this. I don't care how good you are. You need to be disciplined for the way you dog some plays here. You're not going to do it again, but you have to be punished and bench him for a quarter, bench him for a half, bench him for a game. It's okay. Send the message to the kid. Do what Tom Coughlin would have done here, right? Is there any universe in which Tom Coughlin would not have benched the kid, right? Right. And you develop him, and afterwards you put him back in and you pat him on the back and say, "Let's go." Right? You learned your lesson.
mhm,
Get back in the game. What does Brian Dable do? He knows he was dogging it. He says he's starting anyway. He starts him. Says we handle it internally. So supposedly it's handled. The kid plays the game hard, like, he wasn't dogging it. He missed a
yeah,
tackle. He missed a tackle against Najee Harris, who does that, by the way. He will hurdle people. That's part of his game, right? And maybe they were pissed off because they warned everybody, "Hey, Najee Harris in space is gonna try to hurdle you. Go high on him." But whatever. It wasn't like he did that out of lack of effort. He just made a mistake in trying to tackle him and missed him. But that wasn't even the play they benched him for. They
yeah,
apparently benched him for the play where he stopped a touchdown. He actually made a pretty good play on that,
mhm,
where he pushes George Pickens out of bounds. And now you pull him. So what is the kid thinking in his head? Like, I'm hustling, I'm trying, I stopped a touchdown. You didn't bench
yeah.
me for the bullshit, but you're gonna bench me for this. What message are you sending to this kid?
I think that it had more to do with, which just goes to speak why he should just been benched and kind of like punishment should have been in place and move past this because I think when we were coming off a week where he dogged it, Dexter Lawrence had to go talk to him and try to, get this thing figured out. I think Dexter Lawrence misunderstood the situation, thought he didn't wasn't giving effort in that touchdown. He was. I don't think Dexter Lawrence quite understood, and understandably, he was doing his job and thought it was more Fallon Banks. But when you actually, saw it from the broadcast angle or watched the replay, Banks played it really well. He had to cover a different guy and he came back and made a play and he stopped the touchdown. But you heard there was a blow up on the sideline between like the defensive line and the secondary were kind of separated. I think that, that was a move to kind of, you know, to save that. And I think, he kind of got used he kind of got used as a scapegoat there.
He did, but if Dexter Lawrence is the one benching players, you have a coaching problem.
Yeah, and
That
it also just shows like how it should have just already been done because he just had there was a bad stigma with him going into that game. I think he had a if they could have moved past this with a week of him benched.
I remember going into the game. Um, I think it was Carl Banks who tweeted, this is the kind of thing where you guys expect the coaches to do this. This is something that's handled in the locker room by the players. This was before the game. We're
Hmm.
referring to the plays that he dogged at Philly. And I asked Carl, like, I don't think he replied to this, but I asked, like, well, if it was, that's fine. Of course, we believe you, you know more, but then why wasn't it handled before? Like, why does it keep happening?
Hmm.
Um, but even if you say that is the case, why not? I wouldn't, there's no reason not to believe that. If the players that handled it after the Philly game, why do they feel the need to handle it again on the field, in the middle of this game against the Steelers when the kid didn't do anything wrong? Like clearly I think there was a feeling like it hadn't been handled and
Hmm.
people were blowing up. None of this is looking good, right? The bottom line is the product is bad. They're losing football games. Guys look disjointed. I'm not going to say they look disinterested because I do think guys are playing hard, but they look disjointed. They don't look cohesive as a team. Um, they kind of don't look they don't look super prepared for every situation, and as a result, they're just a bunch of players. They're not a football team. That's what it looks like to me, and they're losing games that they have a shot to win because they're not there. We haven't even gotten into the quarterback play. I kind of don't even discuss it much anymore. But I mean, once again, Daniel Jones, he started all right, but when you look at the stat line, it's not horrendous until those two turnovers late in the game. But he doesn't put the ball in the end zone. He flat out like he can move the ball a little bit in the middle of the field. He's often late on his throws, which really reduces his yak producing receivers any chance to gives them takes away their chance to give him yak. Throwing hospital balls, but like this is who he's been his entire career. He's kind of the same, but when it comes down to red zone or trying to put a ball in the end zone at the end of games, he just flat out doesn't do it.
And that's why bad teams lose games, and a lot of it has to do with the quarterback. When you have a good quarterback, you always feel like you have a chance in these close games. Though, teams with Patrick Mahomes, I know you don't like not everybody can get Patrick Mahomes, but you know what I mean. Chiefs always feel like they have a chance no matter what the score is at the end of the game. We feel like we're gonna lose the second we fall behind. That's the difference. And the big difference there is the quarterback. I don't want to go to a big thing on Daniel Jones, but I'm done seeing it, man.
We're all over it at this
Yeah,
point. Like
we're gonna get him
it's
another
yeah.
week. I'm done watching it. I'm gonna be watching it because I have a toxic relationship with this football team, but I'm tired of watching it, man. I can't do it anymore. I can't.
It's tough.
I'm
Like
exhausted.
it's tough to keep watching this because like you feel like you have no shot, and that hopeless feeling in the middle of games is one where like that. I think all of us, those of us who are in the chat, appreciate you guys being here, by the way. Like all of us, like we all share that same like kind of hopeless feeling in the middle of games, and you feel kind of dead inside during the game. You're like, ah, like whatever they do, they'll not finish this game properly. Like you all know that feeling. Like you all have it when you were watching these games, and I wish that would freaking end.
And if you talk yourself into believing that it's gonna be any different, you just end up feeling 10 times worse at the end of the game for talking yourself into it.
Yeah,
Sucks.
yeah. I think that part of things is never going to change. It's never going to change until you have a new quarterback. That's the bottom line. Like until you feel like you have somebody under center who can put the ball in the end zone and win games for you, you're never going to not have that hopeless feeling. And I think, pat yourself on the back, Joe Shane, Brian Dable, John Mara, whoever was involved in making sure that Daniel Jones was the quarterback all these years and basically is not allowed to have any competition. You've put this dead inside feeling inside your entire fan base. It's just unbelievable. I mean, that's what they've done. Everybody feels this way at this point. They're just expressing it in different ways, but it's all the same feeling. They're not too many Giant fans who are sitting there in the fourth quarter of the game saying, "We got this. We're going to win this." Like that doesn't happen anymore. And that's a sign of what you've done to abuse your fan base. Um,
N
yeah,
know what's crazy to me? I was actually looking this up earlier today, just how bad Daniel Jones, because it's just insane the level of mediocrity that we've held on to this long. That we had basically one quarterback through like a huge revolutionized like NFL where offense really took off and completely changed from previous generations. And Eli was there for basically the entire time. And Eli is like clear and ahead, our number one, like everything passing wise. Daniel Jones comes here for 6 seasons after this. He's been here. This is his sixth season. Like when every other quarterback is from like the 80s, 90s, 70s, 60s, whatever, and not everyone is like 6+ years. You think he'd be pretty high up on this list of all-time passers. He is fifth in passing yards. He is seventh in passing touchdowns all time. Like that's crazy to me.
That's how the Giants do quarterback, man. You just hang out
He
no
has
matter what.
like fucking 1950s quarterbacks and like 1960s quarterbacks and like Gary Collins ahead of him. Like
I know. All right.
absurd.
We gotta I don't know what else to say about this team. Like they are what they are. I do know what to say. I'm sorry. I wore this shirt specifically. I whipped it out today because John Mara's got his army out there gaslighting the fuck out of the fan base with oh yeah, I have no way. I'm not replacing Joe Shane, Brian Dable. These guys, they're here to stay. Like I'm so committed to them. He's so committed to them. He feels the need to announce it through the media like
Yeah.
once a week. Like that's real commitment. That's like like I think I put on Twitter. I was like, that's kind of like sitting in like the divorce attorney's office and sitting on the couch and going on a long tirade to him about how like you're going to work things out. This is not really going to happen. You're fine. You have no intention of ending your marriage, but you're sitting in the divorce attorney's office talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
John Mara is sitting there like talking about it. He's going through it. You can gaslight everybody, but you're not going to be able to gaslight yourself, John. There's no way that you're okay with what's going on here. There's no chance you're okay with this. And if this continues, right now, what are we on pace for? Like 4 wins, something like that, 5 wins. If this is a 4 or 5 win team at the end of this, and we've got like another top five, top seven pick, I don't know how, probably a top five pick at that point. I don't know how John Mara can look at these two men in the eye and think, yeah, I want to keep running it back with you two. And I don't know how you can look at your fan base and justify it at that point.
They're gonna need a few gaslight games at the end of the season to justify it, most likely.
Let's see what happens. I mean, it's a bad product.
Yeah. It's
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 a
been
really
bad,
bad
man.
product.
I think everyone's tired of it. Um
I just want to be good. Like I don't even care what route they take at this point. Like
mhm.
I don't care who they hire. I don't care if they keep. I don't even care if they keep these guys. Like I just want them to be good again. Like this
Yeah.
is
Like
awful.
and the last thing I'm kind of saying is it's kind of where I am where it just feels extra hopeless is like there's like years past where you know last year, I really wanted us to bottom out and get Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams with the Joe Judge Gettleman era. Like I was so over those guys, and I knew we had to embarrass ourselves to get out of the Giants' way and hire from outside. Like the mission was clear. Well, at this point, it's like we have a bad season. Are we even positive? Like these guys embarrass themselves. Are we 100% positive they fire them? If we bottom out, are we 100% positive we're going to be confident with the quarterbacks at the end of the season? And it's just like even losing, like I don't know, it's not a great light at the end of the tunnel. I'm just kind of just like it's not worth it for me in my mind at this point. I'm just hoping, and trying to make myself happy. It sucks, man. It's a little therapy right there.
I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do. All I know is that I'm gonna see how this plays out. I know what I'll feel I want. I mean, I've made that pretty clear, and
hmm
I'm not sure there's a whole lot that's gonna change between now and the end of the season to like change that. I feel like they're on track to wanting to get a young quarterback, which is totally fair, but it's not the most robust class in the world to have a need like that in. And I just don't feel comfortable with guys who are likely going to be on their last legs taking quarterback. It's a really bad situation for that quarterback,
hmm
so I don't know what they're going to do. We'll see. But something tells me like they're not surviving this unless they have a big turnaround and start winning some games. You can't be on this trajectory, walk into John Mara's office with like a 4-13 season or something like that, and just be like, yeah, it's time for us to take a quarterback like that. He's not going to be willing to commit much to you at that point. So I don't know if he lets you do it. We'll see. But you know, every week we'll see what the slow march is going towards. With that, 25 minutes of depressing Giants talk. Let's go into some fun
A
stuff.
little too long of
Yeah, sorry
it.
about that. Sorry about that,
Depressed
guys.
everyone.
All right. So this is a really good offensive tackle class, and I don't think it's a moment too soon. We have to start looking at tackles again. Clearly, Jermaine Illuminor has been a godsend as a right tackle. There's nothing fancy about him, but he's definitely like a solid middle of the road, reliable NFL tackle.
Especially
Um,
if you can like chip and help them when you have like a healthy Andrew Thomas.
Right, you can't expect him to beat the best guys, but, when you're
Hmm.
going against a TJ Watts in the world, if you have Andrew Thomas or somebody who you could depend on the left side, you can help out Illuminor against the top guys, and he can
Yep.
handle the other guys pretty well one-on-one, so he's solid, and, the Giants really should look to extend Illuminor, I would say, in this offseason. He's on a 2-year deal, but I would look to extend him, to keep him
I
here
would
because
too.
he's a solid football player.
You can also go to guard if you need him to. Like there's a lot to like there.
You got him in your building. Don't let him walk out at this point.
Hmm.
Keep him here. Andrew Thomas obviously is a stud, but he's had health issues. I think
Hmm.
the Giants have to start looking at getting a tackle. Now, you could go free agency, or you can go into the developmental route in this draft class, or just flat out look for a starter here. But I think offensive tackle becomes a big need, and you have to consider it. The good thing is this is a really solid offensive tackle class, like really good. It's not as good as last year, I would say. Last year there were just so many high end guys and there were just so many guys in
Yeah.
general, right? It was just flooded with talent. I don't think this class is quite as deep as that one, but the top guys in this class are about as good or better than some of the top guys from last year, I would say.
Yeah. I would say I debate, and we'll get into these guys. We're about to get into our top guys. I would debate if either of these top guys are like definitely
They're
gonna be blue
not
chips. They might be,
right. They're
but
not they're not Joe Alt and Olu level,
they're
but
like
they're
right below it.
right there, right? Like
Yeah,
they're
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 like
so
close to where
half
Olu was after a bad season, kind of like around there.
right. They're like a half a level below those guys.
Yeah.
Um, you know, let's go, um, yeah, so let's get into it. So we as per usual, we're not doing like 7 guys like we did last year. We're sticking to 5 for the most weeks. We have 5 guys for you that we think are sort of worthy of watching, top of the class guys. They're not gonna all be top 5, but these are guys worth watching for us, and most of them are gonna be top 5 tackles. We have our grading system. We'll get into that as we review these guys, but some of the things to look for in a tackle as we've done our research are, just somewhat obvious, but you want a guy who's big and strong. You want certain body frames, as Bill Walsh described it. You want girth, you know,
Mm,
in these guys, and that becomes obvious when you start watching the film and when you understand why.
yeah.
You want guys who have really good footwork, guys who can move. Being a tackle in the NFL today, you have to be pretty agile with quick feet. You have to be strong. You have to have
Especially in a
strong
small
hands.
area.
Yep. Your technique has to be really sound. Tackle, you cannot play without good technique. You need to have good leverage and anchor, and you have to be a good athlete in today's NFL as a tackle. The best tackles are the guys who are the top athletes. So
Hmm.
those are the kind of things we're going to be looking at. So we have our grading system, and with that, we graded out all of these guys, and our number one tackle. Who's going first this week?
I believe we had Will
Oh no,
Campbell.
which? Yeah, well, okay. Well, why don't you do Will Campbell?
Sure. Yeah. So I had a tie for my number one, and this was your clear number one. So Will Campbell, offensive tackle, 6'6", 323 pounds, out of LSU. He was a 4-star recruit. He is a true junior. Um, First team All SEC last year, true freshman All American. Just go over some of his stats real quick. So far on this season, he's only allowed to 9 pressures. He has a 98.7 pass block efficiency. Of those 9 pressures, 0 sacks, 4 hits, 5 hurries. He didn't allow a single sack in all of 2023 either. 98.2 pass block efficiency with 17 pressures. But I'll get into a little bit what I liked about Will Campbell. Will Campbell he's a phenomenal athlete. That was the thing that really stood out when I watched him, and he had really good feet to kind of match that. It was all very in sync with his athleticism. He looked very smooth and fluid. Uh, I felt that he used his athleticism, that he could take away a defender before they really even got off the line. He kind of got to them and would, before they even got a chance to make a move on him, he was so quick out of his stance that they were just totally stalemated. And I saw him do that on multiple occasions. I also felt like he was at his best blocking at the second level. So, a guy, if you're coming out of like a zone rushing scheme, I think that's something he would thrive in a lot as a run blocker, because you would have him move to the next level, and he uses that athleticism to really put himself in a good place. Um, I'll say, you know, a positive and a negative here. So the negative I'll mention here is, this guy's 6'6", and when you watch him, at times it was like, wait, is this the tight? Oh, that's Will Campbell, because this dude's standing straight up. He has like the smallest of knee bends. Like, he doesn't look like he's lined up to play offensive tackle, but he uses his feet really well. He can kind of anchor down when he needs to. Like, he's not like, he can use bend when necessary, and he has such good athleticism and so technically sound that it isn't a big issue for him. As much as it worries me to see how high he plays at times, I didn't really see it affect him, which is, that's a good thing. It's something to worry about and monitor at the next level. But it was an issue. But overall, I think his biggest thing is he was a great athlete in basically all phases of the game. Just this athleticism popped no matter what he was doing. The only other thing I'd say that I really had against him was when he gets beat, it can be bad. Like, it's not like he can kind of lunge, and he can kind of have bad hand placement, and he can get toasted. And and usually you had a guy like Jane Daniels who could get out of there. You have a guy like Garrett Nussmeier who's very good at getting rid of the football. It hasn't been a huge issue, but and he doesn't get beat often, but when he does, it looks bad. And the other thing I would say is, I think it has to do with some of his height, but some of the bendier, like, speed rushers, I saw at times really kind of get around him, and that was kind of the only times I really saw him get beat, is kind of like on the outside, was kind of the bendier guys. So that's kind of what I saw. What'd you see, Sal?
I think you did a good job summing it up. I mean, I think what stands out is the athleticism and the raw traits, and the fact that he's so good moving and getting to the next level. Technique issues are an issue. What stands out on tape also in a negative way is his frame. We talked about this. He looks like he's a little bit, I don't want to use the word exactly the term top heavy, but he looks like kind of like he doesn't have enough anchor down below.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of his frame. That there's like a little lack of that girth that Bill Walsh talks about. I think this is the kind of guy though who's young. You can see him filling out his frame, and that anchor part of things will be taken care of. He's such an elite athlete. I don't think it'll affect him. Um, but to your point, like standing up and at times and just technique issues where he gets beat, that has to be cleaned up. He probably needs to be coached up. He's not a complete prospect yet. He needs to develop a little bit. But my bottom line with him is he's a really high ceiling tackle, and he really has all pro upside. He has the requisite athleticism, the physicality, the strength, the traits, and the
Hmm.
measurables that you're looking for to find a guy who will develop into what you think could be an all pro left tackle. And I think he has that potential ceiling. Um, I don't think his floor is necessarily as high as some of the other guys that we are going to talk about because of some, the technique issues and the size stuff. His floor could be like a low end starter to a swing tackle if things don't work out. But I do think he's a tackle at the next level.
Yeah, I think, I mentioned the size. There's also mention, I've heard he doesn't have the best arm length, which makes sense because he can kind of lunge at times, which, that's something you do when you don't have the arm length, which is something that, worries about projection. But yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this. He looks the part. When you watch him, he looks like a guy who is supposed to be a very good offensive tackle, and he's playing that part in college. Some of these guys you see, it's like, oh, he has the traits. Like, this guy, I see the traits to be a great offensive tackle. Like, he has it put together. He has the traits, and I said kind of how I started out there. Like his feet and everything else is fluid and matches along with that athleticism and strength. So, uh, he really does look the part, which is definitely why I'm a fan of Will Campbell.
Let's get to the scoring system. So, our first category is size, length. This is like the girth category in Bill Walsh's guide. We both gave him a 3. We think he's kind of an average NFL. Again, as a reminder, one is really not playable in the NFL. 2 would be below average for an NFL player at that position. 3 is an average NFL score. 4 is above average, and 5 is Pro Bowl to All Pro level within that specific criteria. Size, length, we have him as a 3. Both of us, I think he's average. Footwork, we both gave him a 4. Strength, we both gave him a 4. Technique, we have identical grades here actually. Technique, we gave him a 4. Leverage, we gave him a 3. That's his anchor that can improve, but it's not bad. But there are just too many times where he does lose
Yes,
leverage.
and he plays tall, man. He plays very tall.
And athleticism is his best trait. We both gave him a 5. His overall grade for both of us was 3.83. It's a solid grade that grades out as an above average NFL tackle. For somebody coming out of college, that probably translates to a first round grade, mid first round to like potentially top 10, depending on how the board shakes out. But he's probably in that territory.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, I jumped around a little bit here and there with some of these grades. Like, I think his athleticism's probably on that like 5 to 4 mark. I originally kind of had him on a 4 for size length because you would think 6'6", 315 or whatever, but he does have some of those arm issues. I think he can be kind of inconsistent sometimes with his hands, so I was kind of going back and forth with his technique, but I'm happy with how it ended up playing out. But just some of my
Yeah.
thoughts on it,
I,
with
y-
this.
and we both gave him a 3 for IQ. I don't think he had a Giants and Goon grade on him, but I gave him a 4 for both. I like the way he plays football, and I think he would be a good fit for the Giants.
Yeah,
I just don't see us taking a guy who's a tackle that early, but who knows? You never know what's going to happen in the draft. But that's our OT1. We realize he may not be the best OT, but he probably is the most projectable OT, and so he takes the top spot
hmm
here. That takes us to OT2. This is where we had a little bit of I think actually no, we didn't really disagree on this. We agreed here, I think.
I was just a little bit
Um,
higher than you on this guy, I believe.
by a smidge. You're a
Yes,
little
by
higher.
literally one number on one grade.
Right. So OT2 for us is Kelvin Banks Jr., offensive tackle out of Texas. He is a long-term left tackle since his freshman year, 6'4", 320 pounds, 5-star recruit, has been solid for years as the bookend left tackle, as a left tackle for Texas. This year so far, he's got an 82.6 PFF overall grade, 76.4 in run blocking, 91.4 pass blocking grade. He's only given up 3 pressures, including 1 sack, 1 hit, and 1 hurry so far this year. He only gave up 12 total the last 2 years, 12 pressures each year. That's it. Really spectacular production out of the left tackle position, which you see right off the bat when you watch him. He checks every box very well. He's got really solid size and length. He's got a good solid base and anchor. He plays controlled. He's fluid. He stays nice and square with good technique and pass protection. Has good quickness, and he shows the athletic traits of like a first round tackle. He's got franchise left tackle traits and athleticism. He's got the whole package. He's good at everything. He's not really terrible at anything. Um, he's a good run blocker, at least up front. Like when he gets his hands on you, he's
hmm
strong enough to finish off blocks. If I would say there's a negative on him, he doesn't finish off blocks. He will let guys go.
hmm
And the best run blockers are the road graders who get their mitts on you and they drive you right into the freaking dirt. And he doesn't do that. He lets guys go, and sometimes those guys get loose and they make plays on the ball. So he's got to clean that up. And in pass pro, there's a little bit of stiffness. This is kind of nitpicking, but
hmm
he's overall a very good football player. What are your thoughts about Kelvin Banks Jr.?
He impressed me a lot as a pass protector. I was just kind of going through my notes. I missed. Did you mention his stats?
Yeah, I went over
Oh,
just his PFF scores just now. Yeah,
okay,
the
but
pressures. Yeah,
did you mention his pressure stats?
yeah, I
Okay,
did. Yeah,
so
amazing stuff.
yeah, it's incredible. I mean, when you go through it with the 99.2 this year and 98.8, 94, like we're gonna go through those. I want you guys to all keep in mind, these numbers we're giving through the pass block efficiencies, and he is as high as any of these guys. It's incredible. He's a very, very, very good pass protector. Think he has a very strong punch that he can kind of knock these guys off and just kind of add on to what we were saying there. Um, my only issue with him really is run blocking more like a zone scheme. I think we kind of run with like the power gap stuff. I think he really good because you said like right off the line, very good. He can get his hands on you and he can kind of get you out of the way. But you know, taking you, moving you in a zone, trying to kind of get to that next level and seal a block and kind of like finish these blocks. I have some questions about him there. But he's a really, really good player. I mentioned here my comp for him was honestly Andrew Thomas because and I'll tell you where that started to stand out to me was when he would get an inside rush on him, his ability to kind of like post step into that, anchor down, and just stop a guy in their tracks is reminded me so much of Andrew Thomas because he's constantly doing that where he can just step right up into a guy and completely take away all their momentum and has just such incredible anchor. And I think that's what Kelvin Banks brings to this position. So that's what really excites me. I think he's a very, very good pass protector. And I think will be a good run protector in the right scheme.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a good football player, and I think you can make a strong argument he really is OT1 in this class,
Hmm.
um, because I think he has a higher floor. So I was talking about, I think his floor is higher than Campbell. Um, I think he's more reliable. There's less kinks in the armor here, and I think the fact that he's played left tackle at such a high level for all these years at Texas, he's very much a plug and play left tackle in the NFL. Bring him in, he's your franchise left tackle. I don't see much trouble in him transitioning. All these kids have some issues transitioning, but I think Andrew Thomas is a good comp, but even if he like struggles a little, he's the kind of guy who I think technique wise and experience wise is going to figure it out pretty fast, and then he's just going to be your lockdown left tackle. And he's just a really solid player. What's that worth? It's probably worth the top 10 pick, don't you think? I mean, those are the kind of guys who do go top 10. Top 10, top 15 in the draft. Um, let's go into the grades, Monty. Strength, we size and length, we both gave him a 4. He's above average there, I think, for certainly the way, especially with his arm length. Footwork, we both gave him a 3. Solid, I agree. There was nothing spectacular, but certainly reliable. Strength, you gave him a 5. This is where we differed. I gave him a 4.
Hmm.
Um, I see why you gave him a 5. The reason I gave him a 4 is because he doesn't use that strength consistently in the run game
Yeah.
in terms of driving blocks. I couldn't give him a 5 when he gave up too many. He had too many run blocking faux pas, especially driving guys and letting them go. So if he cleans that up, that's a 5. That's
Yeah,
the only reason.
I
Yeah.
hear you there. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you know where I mean, like his ability to just
He's a
anchor down
mauler.
on these guys and get movement right off the line, I thought was super impressive.
Yeah, no, his raw strength is undeniable. Like once he gets his hands on you, you're not getting past him. Technique, we both give him a 4. I think he's a well-versed, high IQ player. Leverage, we gave him a 3. I think he's got average leverage, and athleticism a 4. Overall grades out to a 3.67 for me, 3.83 for you. Again, a high, above average, borderline, Pro Bowl type tackle in the NFL is what you're looking at with this guy, and I think that's
Hmm.
worthy of a first, like probably a top 15 first round pick somewhere in there.
And I'll say, man, like I think he's a day one starter. Like maybe he has the
Yeah,
issues like Andrew Thomas did. Like they said, he was a day one starter, and it took him some time. But a guy who is as successful as he was from his true freshman year all the way through his junior year. Like those are the guys who translate better at any position. The guys who pop onto the scene right away and are great players and continue to improve every single year. That's what he's done. He fit. He looks the part as a day one player.
yep. All right, so he's number 2. Number 3 on our board um, is actually a guy we had a little controversy here, but I think the upside here is worthy of the third spot.
Yep.
So why don't you introduce number 3?
Yeah. So this was a guy I was a little bit surprised I liked as much as I did. I mean, he's a big name, but Emory Jones Jr., right tackle, 6'6", 315 pounds out of LSU. He was a 4-star recruit. He's a true junior. He was a finalist for the Joe Moore Offensive Lineman of the Year award. He was the Offensive Lineman of the Year, which is left for LSU last year, which says a lot when you have Will Campbell on the other side of the line from you. He was second team All SEC. Really, really impressive player. His stats aren't the best. 21 pressures this year. I mean, that's a lot of pressures to already let up this year. One sack, two hits, 18 hurries, 96.9 pass block efficiency. Not great there. 2023, 18 pressures, so less than he's had all this year. Two sacks, one hit, 15 hurries, 97.6 pass rush efficiency. Then his true freshman year, he started 39 pressures, five sacks, one hit, 39 pressures, 95.7 pass block efficiency. So, obviously not the most efficient player in the pass game. And his PFF numbers are not fantastic either, but which is a little bit why I came in here. I watched the tape. I wasn't expecting to be blown away by this guy, but he has some really, really great traits. And I'll be honest with you, um, although you'll see him get beaten a little bit here and there, it might cause a hurry, things along those lines. I read there's that's 3 hits through 2 years, 3 sacks. Those aren't like when he gets beaten, it isn't typically bad. There's a hurry here and there, but I was watching at the same time as Will Campbell. Will Campbell didn't lose as often as Emory Jones did, but when Will Campbell did, he lunged or something along those lines, and he could get toasted. Emory Jones has such good athleticism to really athleticism and strength that even when he loses, he can really put himself in a good place that doesn't kill him. He plays with really good leverage. I thought out of all guys we've talked about so far, I think he plays with the best leverage. Um, he's a mauler in the run game, absolute mauler. You're looking for a guy who will bury somebody. That is Emory Jones. He will bury you. He has a powerful punch. He will absolutely stun a guy off the line. Great anchor. He's a very high ceiling player. I think, if he can get some consistency in the pass game, this is one of the highest ceiling guys in the entire draft. Well, I was gonna say class, like offensive tackle, but really in the draft, he has some special athleticism. Um, and he's already a pretty reliable player. I think he's a good college football player. Some of my issues, his footwork can be inconsistent. I especially noticed that in the run game. Definitely needs to improve his hand timing. That's not always best. Sometimes he'll hinge a little too far, too far forward. Um, Feet are slow sometimes in pass protection. Overall, I think his quickness is good, but his feet can speed up to kind of match that at times. And he needs to clean up his hands cleans up his hands in general. But really good player. A comp you mentioned to me, Sal, and I definitely see it is Ike Ekwonu, guy from NC State. That was a guy I was a huge fan of. He was my offensive tackle one in that class. I was a huge fan of Ike Ekwonu. So once you mentioned it, I definitely could see it, and it makes sense. I like him so much because I was such a big fan of Icky. He is a guy who needs to clean up a little bit, just like Icky did in the past game. Icky never quite got there. So obviously that's a concern, but he can really change the mentality of your offensive line from a like run game and strength standpoint. And I don't think he's a liability in the pass game. He just needs to improve it. What are your thoughts, Sal?
I had one line for him in my bottom line. I don't know if you noticed it. All I wrote in the bottom line is "bull in a china shop." Um, this guy he just fucks people up. Like
Yeah.
that's his mentality, you know. And I think the more I think about it, I mean, I wasn't as high on him because I felt like he played too out of control, like too often. But you're
Mhm.
right. Like even though he didn't lose big. Like the outcomes were not bad, even though he looked wild at times. But
Mhm.
when you watch him, the reason he looks wild is because he's really trying to fuck people up. Like he's
Yeah.
looking for contact and he's looking to drive people into the ground because I think his mentality is fundamentally, I'm here to run block. I'm here to just mow the lawn here, open up the run game, and I think his pass blocking feeds off of that. I think he has some development to do as a pass blocker, but I think he's good enough. Like he can mirror, he's strong. He has enough tools where I think he can get by in the passing game, the pass blocking game. And I think he's an absolute weapon in the run blocking game. But I think you nailed it when you said this guy is like a he's a difference maker. Like I think he's a culture changer on your offensive line. He comes in, he
Yeah.
starts fucking people up. It's the kind of stuff that's contagious, you know? And
That's a
and
big reason I like Icky so much because I think, you can find ways to make like you're seeing it right now. You can find ways to get your off, especially when you have a guy like Andrew Thomas on your line. You can find ways to chip and get your pass protection good enough to get it done. But when you have guys who can just bring like a mean culture to that offensive line and can just absolutely dominate people in a run game and just, physically overpower the team in front of you, I think that just changes how you can play the game.
yeah. And yes, I am sending a message to the fan base with my shirt. I'm just reflecting the message that John Mara and his goons are sending to you guys. I'm just here to tell you, you know, it's not real. You're just crazy. No, I love the way the guy plays the game. His floor is high. I think at the end of the day, like he's at minimum, he's a high floor run blocking monster as at right tackle, and
Yeah,
that's
or
that
guard.
or guard. You can I think he's a guy you can start a guard if you want to, um,
Mhm.
and just see. But I actually think he's good enough to be. He has the measurables to be an NFL tackle and a monster there. So
Yeah.
with the right scheme and coaching, I think he's somebody who you would have like as a long term tackle. Let's look at our scores here. This is where we differed a little bit, not too much. You size and length, you had him as a 4. I gave him a 3. I think he's average. I think he plays bigger than he is, but minor differences in our opinion there.
Mhm.
Footwork, we both gave him a 3. He doesn't have elite footwork, but he gets to where he needs to, is how I would describe it.
Yeah.
Uh, his strength is absolutely his strength is a fucking 9 out of 5. He's he's a when you watch him, he really messes people up. You'll enjoy he's fun to watch. His technique's a 3, I would say, and I think 3 is being a little generous. I thought I'd give him a 2 here because he's all over the
Mhm.
place sometimes, but I think it's good enough. He
Yeah, I mean,
shows
his
enough.
yeah, I would say, especially when you're trying to combine run blocking and pass blocking, it helps him a little bit of technique.
Fair enough. Leverage, you gave him a 4. I gave him a 3. I only gave him a 3 because I think he hinges too much. He
Mhm.
does
I
have
thought he
I'm
played with
assuming
really good leverage, but I saw a hinge here and there, but, I
it
thought
just I got Evan Neal PTSD, man. Like, I see these guys hinge, and I'm like, "Oh, no." You know? But I see where you're coming from. He has a very solid anchor, and I think
Mhm.
once especially in the run game, he's outstanding. Athleticism, he's definitely a 4. He's an above average athlete. We both gave him a 4 in IQ, 4 in Giants grade, and we both gave him a 5 goon grade. This is the goon of the class. So overall, a solid player. I mean, I project him as a first rounder. I think you do too. Somewhere in the middle of the first round, mid to late first round, I would guess. Teens to 20s, somewhere in that territory.
Yeah. No, I would say so. I mean, I mentioned it to you, like, when I see a guy like JC Latham, who we were not huge fans of, get as much hype as he did, I see no reason why a guy like this can't get the hype. He's not maybe not quite as athletic as Latham was, but I mean, he is just as strong, which was kind of Latham's calling card for the most part, and I think he's less of a liability than Latham was as a pass blocker. I think they're both you ultimately you take him because he's a high upside guy, and I think he brings that.
Absolutely. All right, let me see. Hold on. Where are we? I am going to move on to number 4. And the fact that I get to do this and not you it
Yeah,
means we really fucked this up and we're apologizing, but fuck it. ROT4. And I think I actually thought he was honestly somebody I thought was more OT3, but this is where we disagreed a little bit.
here's how the
But OT,
rankings played out.
yeah, I can't believe this. I had him ranked higher than you, but
Yeah,
OT4 for us cumulatively is Wyatt Millum, offensive tackle, West Virginia University, 6'6", 317 pound, 4-star recruit out of West Virginia, decided to stay home in the state and not go to other Power 5 schools. He had several offers. Um, this guy is productive. So
yeah,
right now, I mean, he's the top graded tackle in college football right now overall. But listen to these grades currently: 92.1 overall PFF grade, 90.1 run blocking, 88.7 pass blocking. He has played. This is so ridiculous. He has played 8 games. Uh, no, 7 games this year. Excuse me. He's played 7 games this year. He has had a total of 450, 415 offensive snaps, 206 pass blocking snaps, and allowed a grand total of 0 pressures.
Crazy.
Not one pressure. No sacks, no hits, no hurries. You know how many sacks he allowed last year? In three, yeah, 0 sacks in 755 reps, 337 pass blocking reps, 0 sacks in 2023. He only allowed 9 total pressures in all of 2023. Nine that just had 9 hurries. The
And tell me
guy
about
is in the
2022.
2022. He had no sacks then either
Yep.
in a full season, and he allowed a total of, I think, 15 pressures that year. He hasn't had a sack since his freshman year in 2021. He hasn't allowed a sack, and I
And
believe he was playing right tackle then, if I'm not
and,
mistaken.
and I just want to throw in, and before that, he didn't have a sack all through high school either.
He does not give up sacks.
Does not give up sacks.
He just that's what he does. Like, you want a guy who doesn't give up any sacks? Just draft Wyatt Millum. He does not give up sacks. Like, and he's a technically sound player. And when you watch him, you can kind of understand it. Wyatt Millum is an interesting watch. Like, he's just a fundamentally sound tackle. Like, he's not an elite athlete. He's a good athlete, but he's such a good football player. Like, that's how I would describe him. Like, there's nothing wrong with this guy. He's the highest floor, in my opinion, of all of these tackles. He's the highest floor in the sense of a pass blocking floor
Mm-hmm.
because he's just
Agreed.
reliable. Um, Good frame and length. He has good size, so he's got a good frame. He's well built, proportional, very high IQ football player. He's versatile. He played right tackle his freshman year. He's played left tackle for years, and he can project as a guard with the way he plays with his short area footwork. He's, as we mentioned, outstanding at pass protection. Not a single sack in 3 full years. No pressures in 24 so far. Very calm. When you watch him, we just talked about Emory Jones, who looks like he's amped up on every rep. That is the opposite of Millum. Millum is calm. He almost looks like he's just kind of slowly getting into the rep at the snap, but he's calm. He uses angles. He sets up blocks very proficiently. Really smooth footwork. Very good in the short area. Climbs nicely to second level. He doesn't have like the elite athletic movement speed that some of the top guys have above him, but he gets there, and he's very efficient with his footwork. He is a road grader. I thought
Mm-hmm.
when he's in run blocking reps, even though his calling card is pass blocking, when he's moving to second level, he absolutely has a finisher mentality. Like, he takes guys out and cleans up lanes. Good punch. I think he has pretty calm hands, like I mentioned. He's very good with his timing. Once he gets his punch inside the chest plate, he locks in and he's done. He does not lose those reps, and I think that's part of the reason why nobody gets any pressures on him. Just He's just a really good football player. I mean, if there's any negative, he does have a little bit of a high cut frame. He hinges a little bit as big guys do, who are built like him. He does tend to play tall. Another guy who stands up a little bit, but not as much as Jenkins. Um, I mean, I'm sorry, not as much as Campbell, but like he does stand up sometimes. Um, his base is good, not great. I do think he needs to put on some mass. I think he needs to get a little bit bigger. He has room to grow, and you look at him, he looks almost skinny for his frame. Like, he's solid, but he looks like he could put on another 10, 20 pounds. And because of that, there's some balance issues. This is the most nitpicky of negatives, though, because most of these things don't translate to an issue on the field, obviously. But what did you think about Wyatt Millen? Tell us your breakdown.
Yeah. So Wyatt Millum, I mean, obviously, really, really like. I think you nailed it. I think Wyatt Millum is somebody who is, like you said, the safest as safe goes. He is, as a West Virginia fan, he's just somebody you don't have to worry about. He is somebody who will go in there and get the job done every single game. And now as somebody who went in there and watched some of the all 22, see how I felt a little bit better about him, learn a little more about him. My biggest issue with him is definitely the leverage he plays at. He plays very tall. Um, like like I said, Campbell plays very tall too, but I don't think it affects Campbell quite as much. I think it really can get to Millam. I saw Millam end up on the ground a good bit. I saw Millam lean a good bit. I think it has to do with his arm length too. Millam doesn't have the best arm length in the world, mixed with, you know, playing tall is a bad combination to kind of play with some bad leverage and bad balance, end up on the ground. So that showed up to me a little bit in pass protection and run blocking, but mostly in run blocking. You know, I don't think he is the best athlete in the world. He's very solid. I have no concerns with him as an athlete, but he's average. Everybody we've talked about to this point has really kind of been a high end athlete. That is not Wyatt Millam. He's been insanely productive despite that. Um, but I think he has a lower ceiling. You never know. If you all you gotta do is just be insanely good at your job and produces like this in the NFL, and it won't matter. But this is what I'll say good about him to add on it. He's a guy who is extremely efficient as a pass blocker. You went over the stats, but he is a guy who will another one like we just talked about that will change the mentality of your offensive line. He's a road grader. He's a guy who goes out there and wants to bury the defense. He is a very solid run blocker. I mean, you look at West Virginia's offense the last couple of years; they've been built around the run. He is a big reason for that. Him and Zach Frazier really led the way last year for West Virginia being an insanely good run team. He brings the run, he brings the pass. He might be the most well-rounded player at this position in this draft class. He's a really high IQ football player. You went over that. But yeah, I mean, uh, could use a little more sand in his pants. He can get bull rushed a little bit. He's got that. He plays high and he doesn't have a great lower body. Other than that, man, uh, we can go into the grades. Why he ended up a little bit lower for me, but don't get it confused. Even if he is what here my OT4 from a grading standpoint, he might be higher than that when just how I end up ranking it, just from what I look for and really valuing a guy with a high floor at the offensive line, especially after all the fucking shit we've gone through at this position.
Yeah, it comes down to preference.
Hmm.
So when you look at our grades, we both gave him, pretty solid grades. I actually came out higher than you overall, but the big difference was with this one category right here, I think, for the most part, which is size and length. I gave him a 4. You gave him a 3. I just like the way he used his length, but I understand why he'd be considered average. I think the arm length does hold him back a little bit, so maybe I'm being a little overzealous here.
I had him at 4. I read more into the arm length. I started to look kind of how the arm length affect him. Kind of realized that it was a little bit more in balance why he was, or a little bit more in playing high to why he was leaning. So that's why I knocked him down to a 3.
Footwork, you gave him a 3, I gave him a 4, and I realize he's not elite at footwork, but I thought he was so efficient with his short steps in the short area, and he got to where he needed to go. I didn't think that this was a guy who, who looked below average, moving around. In fact, I thought he was above average, but so we have a little difference there. We
Yeah,
both gave him go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I mean the only thing I kind of had to go between, I think, athleticism and footwork. I felt like he was a guy who, you could move around, a tackle who could pull, who could get out into space and use his athleticism. But I think we both noticed there was something a little bit lacking there at times with it, where he wasn't quite in level with this guy. So I gave him a kind of a knock for, I felt like if anything where his athleticism lacked, it was in the short area. It was average, but I didn't think it was high end. So I gave him a little bit of a knock there with his footwork. But I mean, he technically he's sound there. It's just he isn't the quickest guy, in my opinion.
We both gave him a 4 for strength. That shows up mostly in the run game technique. You
Hmm.
gave him a 4, I gave him a 3. I thought I tinkered with 4 here. Leverage,
Yeah.
you gave him a 2, I gave him a 3.
Yeah, I
Again,
thought
I'm
his leverage
sure
was really bad.
Yeah, I didn't think it was as bad, but I know that sometimes being a little on the high cut side that does affect you.
Hmm.
Athleticism, I think 4 is about right. We both had him there. IQ 4, we both had him there. Giants grade, we both had him at a 5. That's worth mentioning. And you gave him a 5 goon grade. I gave him a 4. Let's talk about that Giants grade for a second. And overall, you had a 3.37 grade. I had a 3.67. I think I'm a little higher on him, but again, we both feel like he's somewhere between an average and above average NFL tackle.
Yeah, I could
So
tinker with these grades a lot, and you could end up in a different spot. But I like them a lot. Don't get it twisted by the grade.
yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line is that Giants grade is what matters here the most for us because what we're going to need a reliable tackle at some point,
Hmm.
to add to the mix of this room. And this is a guy who I feel he's good enough to take on the back end of the first round, but it would not shock me if this guy dips into day two. I think because he lacks some of the elite athletic traits and the elite, measurables that they're looking for in the NFL and these high end tackles, you can see guys like him dipping into this. These are the kind of guys who do dip into the second round. I don't think they dip far past the second round. We're talking like still probably top 40 to top 50 pick. But I can see a world where he gets somewhere, he's drafted somewhere between like 33 and 40, let's say.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. And yeah, I think he's a guy who potentially fall in the second round. And I think he's a great fit because I think what the Giants need is, I mean, look, we could draft a tackle who can only play tackle, and we could move Illuminor inside. We could have Illuminor be a swing tackle backup slash guard. But I also like the idea of getting a guy who I feel like might be able to play guard for us. And I think White Millum, with his arm length, that might be where they want him. He might want to be tackle. I think he'd be a really good fit based off of where he might go, like you mentioned, and just kind of like a guy I could see you can mess around with his versatility a little bit, and just being a high floor guy. He's exactly the type of guy I'm targeting in this draft.
I feel like, the arm length thing is being discussed in the chat, and this is what we're kind of getting at. Like, I have a feeling he's going to come in right around not Rashawn Slater, Tristan Wirfs' arm length,
Hmm.
um, and that kind of measurement. Maybe Rashawn Slater. What was he around 32, 33 inches himself, right? Somewhere in there.
Yeah,
Wasn't that the
something like
knock
that.
on
I'll look
him?
it up.
Yeah. Now he's not the athlete that Rashawn Slater was, and I don't think he has quite. Rashawn Slater had like spectacular balance and leverage, um, but I think guys like this do get knocked down a little because of those measurables,
Hmm.
and sometimes like I think people do overthink it. It does matter in the NFL. You want guys with length to play on the outside as tackles, but I feel like if a guy has really smooth movement skills and has good timing and punch, it matters less. And I do think
So
he has all those things.
so Slater had 33-inch arms. Um,
Okay.
Wirfs had 34-inch arms. Skoronski had 32 and a quarter, and Skoronski
Uh,
did get
so
moved into guard.
so Skaronski's probably a better comp then in terms of those measurables, if he comes in around 32. So we'll see. I mean, he's interesting to watch, but to me, he's a tackle. Like he's a guy you just stick out a tackle. Just before you move him inside, I would actually let this guy play tackle and
Yeah, give
prove
him a
to me
shot.
that he's not a tackle because I have a
I'll,
feeling he is a tackle.
I'll say I wanted to
Yeah.
address this one because DK brought up a good point because you see those stats and you're like, where do these limitations show up per millim? You never get to beat. I would say it's more just it doesn't look pretty when you watch Millam always. Like he's a guy who doesn't necessarily let up a pressure, but he is a guy who, first of all, Garrett Green, for all his flaws, is he has a below like 5% pressure to sack rate. He's very athletic. He's very good at getting away. That helps, obviously, to some extent. And he's just a guy who gets the job done, but you'll see him laying on the ground. You'll see him, you know, kind of chip a guy and barely get to him, but it does just enough. Not always, but that's where I kind of like it wasn't as elite as the stats might look, as much as he is very, very good.
Yep. All right. So that's number 4. You want to do number 5?
Sure, I'll do 5. Yeah, we do have these a little bit over because this is your guy right
Yeah.
here.
So again, these are not necessarily the guys we think are definitely going to go in the top 5, but this is a guy worth mentioning, and it should be worth like our fifth guy is someone that Dane Brugler brought up as being in his top 5, and a lot of the top guys that we pay attention to do feel that NFL scouts are going to be intrigued by this guy. There's another reason I'm mentioning him in the top 5. Because he goes to the University of Minnesota and is projected to be a second round pick. And if you're a University of Minnesota second round pick, the New York Giants are going to take you. So you're looking at your future right tackle here. Our number 5 is Ariante Ursary, offensive tackle, University of Minnesota, 6'6", 330 pounds. He was a 3-star recruit. He's a redshirt senior. Uh, all Big Ten second team last year. This year so far, he's got solid production all around, 77.9 overall PFF grade, 72.2 in the run game, 81.2 pass blocking. He's allowed 7 pressures, 1 sack, 1 hit, 1 hurry. Those numbers can't be right. What are we missing here? Let me look this up again. Hold on.
Oh yeah.
Hold for
Those don't line up.
confirmation. Hold for confirmation. He's allowed 5 hurries, 1
5,
sack,
okay.
1 hit, 5 hurries, 7 total pressures. Um, Overall, he's a good athlete. He was a state shot put champion. When you look at him, he has an excellent frame. He's a people mover. He's a big dude. He absolutely clears the lane when he's in run blocking. He has a mean demeanor in the run game. Anchors nicely, good hand placement, very strong. His calling card is his strength and his forward mobility. He's already a very, very high end run blocker, and he's a nasty, nasty streak finishing blocks. Um, in the pass game, he is a little choppy. I would say not fully refined, but acceptable. Solid enough. I would say in the pass game. This is a guy, by the way, who, despite his experience, his years in college, he's relatively new to playing tackle. Like he learned late in high school. Didn't get the first 2 years in college. He barely got any reps. I think he had a total of like 70 reps his freshman year and 7 reps his sophomore year. So he's just beginning to get the reps now. Um, but he does look a little slow sometimes with his feet. They can get stuck in mud, as you put here. He can get beat on the outside move by speed rushers. He can play a little bit on the high side at times, and his punch can get there a little too early. I do think his handwork, his punch can be a little erratic, and that does get him into trouble sometimes. But he's an interesting prospect because, to me, I like him as just like a run blocking right tackle prospect. But what do you think about him?
Yeah, man. I just wasn't a huge fan of his athleticism. That's what kind of scared me about him, especially holding up on the out. Oop, am I there? Did I freeze? It
No,
froze on
you're
my
good.
side. Okay. Um, he is a very unathletic offensive tackle. That was my biggest concern with him. He's very strong. He is, as I mentioned, he's a people mover. When he gets on the line, he gets his hands on you, he will move you out of the way. But he struggles in pass protection. One with just kind of his feet being in mud at times. He just really doesn't move well. And I feel like at times, like I said, his hands could be late, and I feel like he struggles with like counters and things along those lines in pass protection. Like he might get the first hit on you. He has good size arms, might get his initial punch, but um, a next move by the defensive lineman will be the one that gets him type of thing. Uh, he's a developmental guy, in my opinion. He has really good size. He has good enough athleticism. His feet need to be better, but um, he has enough to start in the NFL. I've seen a less athletic guy start and be good. And he needs to kind of, if you ever put him in like a zone scheme, he will work to the next level. I think a little bit better, but um, overall, I do like him to some extent, but I am definitely not as high as like a guy like Dane Brugler is, who had him kind of in his top 5. I see this guy as like a late day 2, early day 3 developmental offensive tackle. Will probably go earlier than that, but mm,
Yeah, this is where we disagree. I think that this guy's frame and his demeanor, his upside, and the fact that he's already kind of, you can project him to be like an above average to elite run blocking right tackle. I feel like that means he has a fairly high floor.
mhm.
And I think the frame, the upside, there is more athleticism there, as you said. I think there's more upside here as a kind of a high end tackle in the NFL. All pro level, maybe not, but I think top half of the league, I think so. I think he has that upside in him. So we have a little difference. I'm curious to see how it's going to play out. Um, I think bottom line, we both think he's kind of a plug and play starter, though. At least at right tackle. I think he's or you can put him at guard too.
I
I think
see him
he
more
has
as
that.
developmental.
Yeah. You don't see him as plug and play as a right tackle or a guard.
No.
Interesting. We definitely disagree there.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how teams use him. I mean, it might be developmental. I think he's such a good run blocker that you can just stick him at right tackle, depending on what kind of scheme you use, and you have something there. But it's fascinating. I don't think he's a day three guy. I do think he's probably a day two guy. And the comp I had for him, and you're probably going to hate this, but I like the Christian Darrisaw comp. Um, Only because Darrisaw kind of did everything pretty well. There were some deficiencies in his game too coming out. He wasn't like the uber athlete, and he had some developmental work to do, but overall, like a good run blocker. And I mean, for as good as he is in pass pro now, he had some deficiencies coming out of Tech. So, what do you think about that?
A little too high end for me. I would see him as more of these like one of these big, like, strong, one of these bigger, stronger, developmental guys that have come out. I feel like the Baltimore Ravens draft guys like that every single year, but something like that.
Monty says he's Daniel Falele. All
Yeah.
right.
There you go.
All right. Let's go into the grade. So we obviously differ here. Size and length, we both gave him a 4. I think that's self-evident. Footwork, I gave him a 3. You gave him a 2. I can see why you'd give him a 2. I'm not going to contest it. Um, I think I was tinkering with 2 versus 3 there. His feet are a little choppy and slow
Mhm.
sometimes. We both gave him a 4 for strength, although you could argue he could have gotten a 5 here. Um, Technique 3, I think he is pretty well-rounded and solid, nothing elite. Leverage 3, same thing, nothing elite, well-rounded. Athleticism, I gave him a 3, you gave him a 2. I think you're a little too low on him on the athleticism, but I heard your rationale. Um,
I'll I'll say to the strength too. I think he has really good strength in the run game, and he has decent, like, anchor, like, if he gets a guy, like, at the line, but I saw him, like, if you get a little speed to power on him and you get a running start, I don't think he's the guy. I saw him get pushed back a little bit that way, so I'm not quite at 5 with him as far as a pass protection, strength.
and overall, like IQ 3, we gave him a 3 for Giants grade. I think he has a place on this team. Would he be their top target? I don't know. Goon grade, we both gave him a 3. So, I mean, we're off a little bit here, but ultimately, it just depends on how you see him. I think his upside is a lot higher than I think you may think, but then again, I also think he can start right away, and you think he's
Yeah.
developmental. I'm
I
curious to
think he
see where
could
he
be a
goes.
starter. I just don't see him as, like, a high-end starter.
Okay, I can live with that. Like, right off the bat, I can live with that, but I
No,
think he can start.
I don't think he could start right away. I don't think he'll ever be a high end. I think he could be a
Oh,
starter.
interesting. I think he'll be an average NFL tackle, you know? I mean, if you define high end as, like, top 10, I agree. I agree with that, but could he be like a top 15 at his position at tackle? I think so.
We'll see. I mean, I watched minimal tape. Brugler's high in him. I could always change on this, but that's just what I saw off my initial watch.
All right. So that's our 5. I mean, we're not going to go into any more. I know there are other guys out there. There is some depth. But it's a good class with the first few guys. After that, there is a bit of a fall off, as you can see. Some good players, not a whole lot of elite type players. But if you're at the top of the class and you're looking for like an elite upside, there are a couple of guys to swing on here. Um, with that, that's the tackle episode. Uh, we got to get into some stuff we're going to do soon. Um, Number one, we got to get through these position rankings. We've been taking a little extra time. I've been very busy at work. Monty's been busy at work, which is why we are kind of doing these ones every other week sometimes, although we'll try
Mhm.
to keep it weekly as best as we can. We do have to get through these things before the end of the season. Um, we hope you guys are appreciating the time we're putting into watching a lot of game film and coming up with a grading system, because I think that helps make it objective. And we usually agree. We rarely have a disagreement like that, but I think when we disagree, it's interesting to see where this is going to land.
Definitely.
Um, but as always, we go into college games to watch this weekend, and there's one really big game at 12 o'clock on Saturday on Fox. It is number 4 Ohio State at number 3 Penn State. This is really interesting, Monty. Like I am fascinated by this game, um, but I think this game's worth talking about because there's a lot on the line here. Ohio State already has a loss. Penn State is undefeated, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
Um, I think there's no doubt that Ohio State is the better football team. But man, they're not looking like they should right now. What do you think about this game?
Did you hear what Will Howard was saying?
No. What do you say?
Apparently, that was Penn State was a school that Will Howard wanted to go to, and they refused to give him a scholarship. So he's coming in here with a chip on his
To
shoulder. Apparently,
Will Howard to
apparently,
to do what exactly?
I
Something.
don't know, something.
Sorry to ask, and if Ash watches this to him, but okay. Um, for those who don't know, there was a similar story the last few years. JJ McCarthy grew up a huge Ohio State fan.
Hmm.
Grew up outside of Chicago, a big Ohio State fan. Wanted to go to Ohio State. That was his first school. Comes out and he goes there and he like puts on a show during his recruitment to try to go there, and then he finds out that they don't want him and he
Hmm.
says, and he because he's such a spiteful competitor, he's like, you know what? Fuck you and fuck all the times I rooted for you as a kid. Not only am I going to go somewhere else, but I'm going to go to the team up north. I'm going directly to Michigan. He goes up to Michigan and he just fucks up Ohio State his entire career. There, wins a national title, walks away, top 10 pick. The rest is history. I don't see Will Howard pulling that one off, Monty,
No.
not on his own. I do think they're better than Penn State, though. I
Hmm.
think they're better, and they should win. Like, if I'm Ohio State, I am not messing around in this game. I'm not asking Will Howard to do a ton. I'm handing the ball off to my monstrous, you know, my monster like running backs, and I'm trying to win this game on the ground and trying to push Penn State around the best I can. But that's going to be a fun game to watch. Um,
Agreed.
going down the, yeah, go ahead.
Another game at the same time to keep an eye on, for people who are continuing to watch, QB prospects. Cam Ward is continuing to impress. He's a guy who Giants fans have an eye on closely. Not the toughest of competition on the ACC schedule, but Duke definitely one of the better defenses in the ACC. Miami should kill them, but at least they have a good defense. Should be, a good game to watch to see how Cam Ward plays.
Feels like a trap game, doesn't it, for
Yeah, and
Miami?
-20. Whew.
-20 at home
I don't
against
know. I don't
Duke.
like that line.
It's a
minus
it just has
20.
and it's a day game. Like it's got a bad feeling, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
like I'm not wishing anything bad on Miami. I'm just saying like these are those in conference games that sometimes you're like, how is this game tied like midway through the fourth quarter? Kind of thing.
Yeah, I
So
mean, they lost by 1 point to ranked SMU last week, and
their defense is really
trusting.
good.
Yeah,
I mean, the Duke defense could give
and
Miami trouble here. Watch
they
out.
got
This
a
could be a
good
sneaky good game
quarterback.
here. Yeah, it could be a sneaky good game. It really could be. Um, isn't what's his face? The kid from Texas, their quarterback this year?
Yep.
Malik, what's his last name? Um, forgetting his last name. I'll
Murphy.
Malik Murphy. Yeah, he was one of the three quarterbacks last year with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. So
Hmm.
fascinating stuff. I wouldn't be so sure that that won't be a competitive game. So
No.
I'm curious how that goes. But another chance to see Cam Ward. Um, there's some interesting games on the schedule. Not like super interesting. I mean, Oregon is at Michigan. This would have been generally viewed as a great game. Michigan has been awful this
It
year.
should have been good.
It's not looking good. Michigan's not ranked right now. They're struggling. Oregon's a 14.5 point road favorite. This has the makings of like a beatdown, unfortunately, for the Michigan faithful. Um, I mean, I'm just looking here. A team worth watching. Now, this is not a big game, but it's an in-conference game. If you haven't paid attention, start watching Indiana. They
Hmm.
are ranked 13 in the country. They're undefeated, and they are messing people up. They have a brand new coach, came out of JMU, and their entire program has changed. Like overnight, their program has changed. It's Kurt Cignetti or Kirk Cignetti. I forget how you pronounce it. But Indiana looks like a team that I think can compete potentially for making the playoffs. And like who knows once you get there, but they're a well coached football team. So start watching them. They're playing Michigan State this week. I would expect them to win that game.
And Curtis O'Rourke, their quarterback, brother of Is it Nate
Nate
O'Rourke?
O'Rourke, Nathan
Yeah,
O'Rourke, yeah.
his brother. Um, Highest rated passing grade in college football according to PFF.
Amazing.
So
Amazing.
keep an eye on it.
Another fun game at 7:30 at night, kind of skipping down. Number 10, Texas A&M at South Carolina. South
That's
Carolina
what
has
I
been
like.
playing. That's a fun one. They've been playing some good defense, man.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that could be a fun game to watch. A&M is coming in, um, top 10 again, fighting for a spot to try to get into the playoffs. Remember, this year 12 teams get in. You're going to have one team that wins the conference. I think there are how many at-large bids? I forget. There has to be somebody. There has to be at least one or two non-conference teams, I think, and then like the rest are at-large bids.
I think the
So
best non-power four conference winner gets in. I'm not completely sure. Still learning it.
well, the SEC is loaded with teams that are really
Yeah.
powerhouses, and so a lot of these teams are jockeying to be the SEC teams that make it. You would expect three teams at least from the SEC to make it, so you'll see
And
who gets
this
there.
South Carolina team is frisky. I mean, they are
Hmm.
not ranked. They are 4-3, but this is a team that lost by 2 to Alabama. This is a team that lost by 3 to LSU. Had a good shot versus both of them. Really good freshman pass rusher on that team, among other good players. That they certainly could spoil Texas A&M.
Yep. And honestly, there's not a lot else on this
No,
schedule that
not a good
I'm
week.
loving here. Kentucky at Tennessee might be a decent game. Um, Certainly, if you're paying attention to future quarterbacks, um, obviously. Well, oh yeah, I should mention QB1 of this class from Vanderbilt University, Diego Pavia. Uh, the story of the college football season, as recommended to us by our buddy Tony. Tony Stallone, who's been telling me like, if you don't talk about Diego Pavia, you guys are garbage. We're talking about Diego Pavia, who every single week seems to find a way to have his team ready to upset someone. Vanderbilt is back. I don't know if they were ever there, actually. I shouldn't say they were back, but there's something now. And it's because of Diego Pavia. So watch Vanderbilt games.
Yep. There you go.
All right. I think that's it for the games. Not a bunch of powerhouse things, but again, if you want to see a big matchup, Ohio State at Penn State, it's an early game. So make sure to make some time on your early calendar on Saturday. Watch it at 12 o'clock. Giants this weekend. They are playing on a short rest week at home against the Washington Commanders. Um, you have any thoughts on this one going in, Monty?
Man, now it doesn't look like the same Commanders team that we almost beat without a kicker a few weeks ago. They are red hot. They had that crazy Hail Mary to win over Chicago. The Giants are as cold as ever. They can't seem to pull out any close games. Look, we've owned Washington. They got to come out and play them. I mean, that's how it is. They got to show up. We'll see. It's hard to be enthusiastic and have a ton of optimism right now. But I certainly think it's a winnable game. But they got to prove it.
Yeah, I mean they're gonna be home underdogs. I think the line's around like 4 points or 3.5 points favoring the Commanders. It's not a good time to be a Giants fan here. Current line is -4. Commanders -4 on the road. That's almost saying like they're touchdown favorites in this game, which I think is probably about right. So, if the Giants want to have anything to do with their season not dying on a vine here, you got to find a way to win. This is a division game at home. You got to find a way to win it. Like, this team is better than you, but you should be able to do enough to be in a close game and pull out a victory at home. So, I would expect a Giants win this weekend. I know people are going to laugh at that, but like you got to find win somewhere on your schedule. And a
Hmm.
home division game like this is one where you have to walk away with the W. You have to.
If you don't win this game, there is a very good chance that you end this season 0-6 within your division.
Yeah,
Very good chance.
not good.
Washington was the one team that you've managed to beat. Cowboys are beatable, but you're gonna have to play them on the road. Eagles own us, so we'll see.
All right. With that, we'll close it out. Thank you guys for being here. I know everybody's watching the Yankee game, which is currently 6-6 in the top of the eighth. Bases loaded for the Dodgers with one out. So good luck, Yankee fans. Thank you. As always, please hit the like button on your way out, subscribe, spread the word, retweet us, let your friends know. For the diehards in here, we appreciate you guys. We'll be back hopefully next week. We'll see. Work allowing. We're going to go back to defense. We have to pick a position on defense. Um, we've done cornerback. We've done interior D line. What do you want to do next?
Edge or
Add,
linebacker,
add
right?
your linebacker. What do we need more? I would say linebacker is a bigger need. What do you think?
Or wait, I meant edge or safety. We've done linebacker.
Right. I'm sorry. We have done linebacker. It's been a while. I'm sorry, and I'm
Yeah.
tired. So edge or safety. We obviously need a safety. Right? We always need safeties, but let's do edge. What do you think?
I'm down with do edge. I
Let's
think
do
it's
edge.
about time.
We're
It's
doing some trench
interesting
work here.
class.
It is an interesting edge class, so we'll come back with edge hopefully next week. If not, we'll come back the week after that. Thank you guys. Like and subscribe us. You can find me at Queens_guy. Find Monty at MONTECRI5TO. You can find us at He's a Giant Pod. We're on Apple. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube. Thank you guys. We will see you next week. Hopefully, go Giants.
Go Giants.